Summit taught us anything is that the world is still very much divided about climate change. Well, Christopher Monckton is regarded as one of the world's leading skeptics on the issue. He's here in Australia, in the studio. And to debate him, climate scientist Dr. Ben McNeil from the University of New South Wales. Good morning to you both.
Morning.
Look, Monckton, you've asked me to call you Christopher.
Yes.
Why have scientists like Ben got climate change so wrong?
I think what has happened is that they have exaggerated the small grain of truth that underlies it. Yes, if you add greenhouse gases to the atmosphere, you will get warming, but you won't get very much.
OK. Ben, is that a possibility, that the greenhouse gases are being overstated, that the impact on climate is being overstated, that this is just simply a natural event we're going through?
Look, we've had 150 years of understanding of what is driving our climate and what greenhouse gases are. Just like we know that UV is reflected by the sunscreen properties, we know greenhouse gases trap heat. Now, it is very true that we have a range of different warming trajectories we're going on. It could be 2-degree warming by the end of the century, up to 7 degrees warming. But that's entirely dependent on how much greenhouse gas that we emit in the future. The science in terms of climate change is well and truly over in terms of the fundamentals. We can debate the politics, we can debate what we do, but in terms of the fundamental understanding, it's like trying to really debating the laws of physics. It's not debatable, unfortunately. The politics is, and I'm sure Lord Monckton will enlighten us on the politics. He's a politician, but in terms of the science, it is fundamentally sound.
Well, is Ben right? Because the vast majority of scientists, credible scientists in the world, do back climate change.
Do you have any evidence for that?
Well, the IPCC report is one of all peer-reviewed 4,000 scientists.
All right, let's take the peer review process then. Just recently it was exposed that they had decided that the Himalayan glaciers were going to melt by 2035. Settled science, IPCC, we've known it for 150 years, and now they've admitted what they really meant was 2350. And the peer reviewers told them they'd got it wrong, but the authors overruled the peer reviewers. Now, when I write a peer-reviewed paper in a scientific journal, if the reviewer says, we want you to explain this equation or expand that or say the other, you have to change it. In the IPCC, the authors prevail. There is no proper peer review process.
Ben, the sceptics have pointed out a lot of these holes in the report. Does that discredit the whole report?
You have thousands and thousands of different published peer-reviewed evidence and science to go by in these reports. Now, if I was a reasonable person, I can easily accept the 999 observations that are out there. For example, that the Arctic sea ice has actually rapidly declined, worst case scenario, beyond what we thought in terms of our models. But in terms of the melting of these glaciers, that's true. We're always saying, well, there's still melt in terms of glaciers, but in terms of this particular issue, okay, maybe not 2035, but it's still melting at an unprecedented rate. And that one evidence, what about sea level rise? What about droughts? What about bushfire risk? What about the temperature record? I mean, what we're seeing here is an attempt by many people in society who don't like what the science is saying, and I understand that absolutely, but to try and point to cherry-picking information here and there over the insurmountable amazing amount of evidence that is out there from Australian scientists. We have CSIRO climate scientists, Bureau of Meteorology climate scientists, to somehow discredit what we do in our lives, in our professional lives, is outrageous.
With all respect, you are not an expert on the central question in this debate, which is climate sensitivity. How much warming will you get if you add CO2 to the atmosphere?
And sorry, you're a climate scientist?
What I'm going to do is to give you some results in the peer-reviewed literature. Yes, one of them was written by me, but we're not going to mention that. We're going to mention other people, eminent scientists, not laymen like me. Let's take Professor Richard Lindzen, for instance, who has produced paper after paper showing that climate sensitivity is around 1/4 to 1/7 of what the UN says it That means you get 1/4 of the warming that the UN says. Douglas and Knox, series of papers from 2004 to 2009 saying the same. Numerous papers now saying this. And why? Because if you look at the only period of sustained warming over which we could have had any influence, and that's between roughly 1983 and 2001, all previous periods of warming we couldn't have had any influence on any analysis. In that period, the radiative forcing, the change in temperature forced by something happening, was naturally occurring cloud cover change of 3 watts per square metre, all anthropogenic forcings, estimated by the IPCC 0.8, 5 times as much forcing from natural causes as from CO2. From that, you can calculate that the effect of CO2 on temperature is once again 1/6 to 1/7 of what the UN says. That is an observed result.
We had this debate, and there are a lot of other scientists who totally disagree with that. But I suppose my point is, if you're wrong, we go to hell and back.
Right.
Hang on. If Ben's wrong, well then, what have we done? We've better managed our resources. What have we lost?
Just a moment. What we've lost is lives, and in the millions. Here's what Herr Ziegler, the UN's Right to Food rapporteur, said recently. He said, when millions are dying of starvation, the diversion of food to biofuels is, and these were his words, a crime against humanity. There have been food riots in a dozen major regions of the world just over the last few years. There have been mass deaths from starvation caused by the sudden doubling of world food prices, attributed by the World Bank to the global warming scare and the diversion of food to biofuels. Therefore, you have to be very, very careful. If you take precautions which cost more than what you're taking the precautions against, you will kill people by the million. And I think it is disgraceful that we have allowed these deaths to happen.
We both agree.
That's why we need good policies, Lord. It's about the policies and how we actually move forward to create a low-carbon, low-pollution economy, which is actually more prosperous. And just to go back on what Claude Monckton is saying, climate is our human prosperity, where we live, how we drink our water, where our food comes, is dependent on a stable climate. We change climate over a century, and that's a long time scale, in centuries, and we are going to do that. We're going to change the fabric to which our civilization exists. Now, that is not a scare campaign. That is just the fact of how we are. And so, for us, we need to have really important a debate about the policies, where we go, how we reduce our emissions. And there are wonderful innovators in our country, Koshi, who are building these wonderful new technologies for this new age. And that's where we need to go.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. We've run out of time. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Lord Monckton, welcome to Australia. It's good to see you. Thank you.